Good morning, friends. Welcome back to the podcast. My name is Hannah, and on this podcast, we like to talk about purity culture, marriage, relationships, sex, girly things here at the podcast, all things woman, which is perfectly timed for this episode because I actually have a very special guest with me. I have someone from the Daysy team, and if you've been following me for any amount of time, you know I talk about Daysy a lot. Daysy is a fertility tracker, and so I have Holly here with us on the podcast. Thank you so much for being here, Holly.
Oh, thanks for having me on.
I am so excited. I'm obsessed with your accent, and I'm sure that's like a really like silly redneck thing to say. Like it's just like an American, very American. You are an American, very American thing. But I love it. It's very fun to talk to somebody. This week I recorded with somebody from Canada, and I know you're in LA now, but you were in England before, so I feel like we're just
Yeah.
all international here, which is very fun.
Yeah, I'm British, but I've been in LA for a long time, so but I've kept my accent. It hasn't gone
Yeah.
away.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. I have talked about Daysy for a long time because I have so many women who are in so many different walks of life with their like fertility and with their birth control usage. Some may, are trying to get off the hormonal birth control, or some are just like, I've only heard like scary things about natural family planning and trying to track my cycle and like it not working. And I've had women from all over in their different walks of fertility, and I'm always talking about Daysy. And so to have you here on the podcast for us to like get to chat about it is really awesome. So seriously, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today.
Of course.
So, can you just like introduce yourself a bit? Tell us a little about yourself and how long you've been with Daysy, and like what drove you to be work with a company like this.
In 2009, let's say, I went off the birth control pill myself. I'd been taking it for 10 years,
Mm,
and I was kind of going through this journey of coming off it after that long, what I was going to do next for contraception, learning about my body and my cycle for the first time since I was a teenager.
mm,
And that journey became, back in 2009, again, a blog, which was what we
oh,
did in
cool.
those days.
Mm,
And then it became a book, and I
mm.
wrote a book about my experience.
Oh, wow.
And that book kind of led me very deeply into the world of women's health and
Hmm.
fertility. And that kind of led me to exploring alternatives, what was out there. And then
Hmm.
at the time, the femtech sphere was pretty small,
Mm-hmm.
but it was gaining momentum. There were
Hmm.
some apps and devices. And while I published the book, I was working in journalism still at the time. I was still working as a reporter. I connected with Natalie Reckberg, who's the founder and CEO of
Hmm.
Daysy, and she had built her company in Germany. It's a European-based company
Hmm.
out of just outside of Munich, kind of the Bavarian Alps. So it's kind of like a
Mm.
Sound of Music
Oh,
landscape.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
very beautiful,
Yeah.
like wildflower valleys and
Hmm.
cowbells and,
That's
snow-topped
so
mountains.
picturesque.
It's
So
actually
picturesque.
very close to where the castle is that the Disney castle was based on.
Oh, wow, that's so cool.
So it's very
Wow.
fairy tale. It's
Yes, very fairy tale.
So we connected, and she wanted to launch Daisy in the US,
Hmm.
and that was in 2014, late
Mm.
2014. And I decided to come on board and help her with that,
Yeah.
essentially. Her father had started the company in the 80s.
Mm.
So this was not a startup. This was
Hmm.
a company with longevity that had been
Right.
making other kinds of fertility trackers for a long
Hmm.
time. But this was a fertility tracker that connected to an app, which
Hmm.
was new.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
And so at the time, I said, well, I'll come on and help you launch in the US and find an audience, which, of course, for a lot of people, there was a lot of the audience was people like me.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, that's how I came to come on with the company. I've been working with them for about a decade,
Yeah,
incredibly.
that's awesome.
We recently launched our newest product, which is the Tina, which was for teenagers and
Mm.
kids who get their first periods and then go on
Hmm.
to want to learn about their cycles, but completely from a wellness standpoint. So it's a
Yeah,
very different product, not fertility based, of course.
gotcha. Yeah.
It's very much wellness and health based,
Hmm.
but accurate tracking of irregular periods, essentially what's
Mm.
normal for teenagers. So yes, it's been a long time, and I've done
Yeah.
all kinds of things in that time. A lot of podcasts,
Yeah.
workshops, public speaking,
Hmm.
brand rep stuff, all kinds of things.
Yeah, that's
Hmm.
awesome. It's so cool that your founder knew the importance of also trying to bring it over to the US, because this is something that we absolutely need. Women's health is, and our bodies is just not talked about over here. Like, it's not a regularly known thing, especially in, I know you're in Los Angeles, but especially in the southern area where I'm from, it's like you're not taught about your body, you're not taught about your cycle. You're just like, you get your period, it's like, okay, here, put a tampon in, and that's it. Like, there's no conversations about it. There's no like what's normal with your period, what's not. There's a lot of shame around it. And then you go and get married, or even just like in your college years when you start to have sex, and then you like know nothing. And so you're like, okay, I guess I'll just like get pregnant the first time I have sex. And you don't know anything. And so a company like this, where it is like helping support you in your fertility journey and just like understanding your body and your cycle, is so powerful. And I'm so glad that like she had that vision and that you like partnered alongside, and now it is here in the US, and so many women use it, and so many people are like gaining perspectives about their body and understanding their body and having an alternative to the hormonal birth control that unfortunately it has messed up a lot of us. And so people are looking for something else to use, which is truly incredible. So let's dive into what Daysy actually is. So if somebody is not familiar with Daysy, I mentioned that it is a fertility tracker. So if you are watching on YouTube, I do want to show you, they have this new case, I can't think of the word case, the new case that it comes in, which is really cool. But I'm showing you, it's the fertility tracker. You can see it on YouTube if you're watching. But so this is what Daysy looks like. But could you give us an overview of what Daysy is, what it does? You mentioned an app that comes with it. So if someone's like, I have no idea what this is, Hannah. Like, what is this?
So it's a basal body temperature based fertility tracker. So you take the lid off the top there that you see,
Mm-hmm.
and you put that sensor under your tongue first thing in the morning when you wake up before you do anything else. You take your temperature. The basal body temperature is essentially your resting temperature, or the lowest temperature you will achieve in a 24-hour day.
Mm-hmm.
So it registers that temperature, stores it, analyzes it, and uses that so that it can learn your menstrual cycle
Mm-hmm.
and know when you ovulate.
Mm.
And so, using that information, it can give you your fertile days or fertile
Mm-hmm.
window and the days that you're not fertile. And
Mm.
it does that using a color code system. So, the red is the fertile days, the green is the non fertile days. And then there's also a yellow light, which is essentially a learning light. So, when
Mm.
it's in its learning phase in the beginning of use.
Okay.
And just to quickly explain for those who don't know, basal body temperature is a very accurate fertility sign.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, your basal body temperature gets slightly higher, not detectable by a
Mm-hmm.
regular thermometer, only detectable by a basal body temperature level thermometer.
And
Gets
that's why
slightly
it's
higher.
important to not use just like the one that you have whenever you're having a fever, or like that's why it's important to use something different. That makes sense.
Yeah. And so it will step up slightly
Mm-hmm.
after you ovulate, and
Mm.
then stay high, in fact, until just before you get your period.
Mm.
So basal body temperature can be used to see when you've ovulated and when you're about to get your period, and predict
Mm-hmm.
that within a couple of days. So what you're using is the basal body temperature data that you're giving the device,
Mm-hmm.
as well as when you tell it that you have your menstruation, which you just
Mm-hmm.
can do on the device itself with a button
Mm-hmm.
press. And the algorithm, which has been developed over the course of the last 40, almost 40 years,
Mm.
that contains the data of many possible women's cycle scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
So it's learning you uniquely, and it's comparing it with this algorithm. And then
Mm.
it gives you your fertility status on a daily basis. So it's
Yeah.
learning what's normal for you and your unique cycle, and
Mm-hmm.
telling you when you are fertile and when you are not fertile. Now,
Gotcha.
it can also tell you some other things, like your most fertile days. It can tell you you might possibly be pregnant,
Mm.
based on that data that you're giving it and the
Mm.
algorithm.
Wow. So, when you say it like really gets to know you, I know it has an app with it. So does this like automatically connect to the app? So is there like when you put it under your tongue or whatever, does it tell the app what your temperature is? Is that how that works? Like, so
So
it's like,
you will sync it via Bluetooth to the
mm-hmm,
app. So it's not Wi-Fi, it's Bluetooth. So
mm-hmm,
you will press a button to sync it to the app when you're ready. And then,
mm-hmm,
yes, your data seamlessly transfers to the Daysy Day app. And
mm,
in the app, you can see your actual basal body temperature chart. So you will
gotcha.
see the rise and fall that I've just described, and
Right.
you will see the colors that I've just described in
Mm-hmm,
the app as well as on the device itself.
Right.
And then, as well as that, you can see other things like your cycle data and stats, like average
Mm-hmm.
cycle length, the normal day of the cycle you ovulate, average
Mm-hmm.
luteal phase length,
Mm-hmm.
as much or as little data as you want to get involved in. You can
Mm-hmm.
also track things like when you have sex, whether it's unprotected or protected. You
Mm-hmm.
can track your cervical fluid. You can track
Mm-hmm.
other elements in there as much as you want to, or as little as you want to. So we have a
Yeah.
range of people who use it. Some people will use their Daysy, and they'll just check the lights on the device, and maybe they'll
Mm-hmm.
sync to the app once a week and see more.
Mm-hmm.
Or there's some people who like to sync every day. It's really
Yeah.
your choice.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think it's so good to have all the like options of information because I know maybe for some people it can be maybe overwhelming during a certain season to like have all this data. Whereas like, okay, but if it's not that kind of time in your life where you just or if it's overwhelming, you don't have to do it. But then if you're like, no, like I'm really ready to dive in. Like I really want to know, like especially if you're like trying to get pregnant, that is probably a time where you're like, okay, I really need to dive in. I need to know what's going on. I think that's really beneficial. I know when I first got married, when I was like right when I was engaged, trying to figure out what I was going to do about birth control. I was like, I don't have the mental capacity to figure out like the cycle tracking. Like I just can't do it. It's too much. And so I just got on the pill and had a horrible experience on it. Ended up going to a different pill, same thing. And then I ended up with NuvaRing, which when I was using NuvaRing, like I would have told you I loved it. I was like, this is great. I have no effects. Like it's awesome. And my cycle it is every Thursday or on the Thursday it's starting. Like it is like down to the day. Like, so, it was perfect. It was perfectly synced up. But then when I got off, I was like, oh, I'm such a nicer person now, not being on this anymore. Like, I'm happier. And it was almost for me personally, like instant. Like, I know for some people it takes some time, but it was almost instant for me. I got it all, I got out, took it out, and I was like, I am just who I actually am now. Like, I'm not mean and irritable and, no patience. Like, I'm actually nice. And so I wish I would have known about this and had done my research and known that like it could just be as simple as like taking your temperature every day and then your app just tells you like, hey, you're good to have sex or hey, let's not have sex today. Like it's nice to have that option.
Yeah, and a lot of people get the reassurance from when they've been on birth control for a long time to come off and see, oh, I'm ovulating again, I'm getting a normal period again, my
Hmm.
cycles are coming back. If I do want to have a baby in the future, I know that I probably can.
Hmm.
And then usually when people plan, they tend to be able to, in our experience, get pregnant pretty quickly
Yeah.
at the timing that they want. So it gives you a
Right.
lot of control and a
Hmm.
lot of information and a lot of peace of mind as well,
Yeah.
essentially. So
Right.
you're directing the choices, you're getting the
Yeah.
data from Daysy, it's telling you when you're fertile and when you're not. And of course,
Hmm.
that information is up to you to do what you want with it month to month.
Hmm.
It's really in your hands.
Yeah, that's really powerful and really nice and just like convenient and helps you feel in control of something that maybe for a while felt uncontrolled if you were having like birth control and like cycles wasn't correct and syncing up and you're like I'm tired of this, like I want it to be back to like a regular cycle. This is a way for you to like have that information and help you like you said be more in control, which I think is really great. And I think what you said too, like helping you feel in control also for the girls who've like grown up in like purity culture and in the South and like feeling like you don't really know your body, this is a great way to have some like agency again over your body because it's like there's literally nothing wrong or shameful for knowing the ins and outs of your cycle. Like that's better for you because knowing your cycle can affect so many areas of your life. I know people who cycle sync their workouts, like they'll change their workout based on where they're at in their cycle because they feel like they can like work out in a better way for their body, which I think is really powerful. So what in your years of doing this and your research and all and just living it, like what have you seen like benefits of like really understanding your cycle and understanding the data that Daysy gives you? Like what are the benefits you're seeing in your life from like really understanding your cycle?
Well, I think there is an element that there's a lot of women who enjoy having enough information to be able to know what phase they're in. So, obviously,
Hmm.
before ovulation, it's a follicular phase. After ovulation, you're in the luteal phase. And even just that first part of the cycle, second part of the cycle divide, it may change like your interest in certain activities, your energy levels, like your outlook, like what
Hmm.
you're really skilled and talented at doing at that point, what
Hmm.
you're really efficient at. As you said, you can. A lot of women like to go and figure out their workout routine or even
Hmm.
like what they eat based on that
Mhm.
particular divide and what
Mhm.
the cycle syncing lifestyle. So we
Mhm.
certainly have a lot of people who do that to different levels. It could be quite simply just being aware, okay, I'm in my luteal phase. I feel more introverted. I don't want to
Mhm.
like pack my social calendar. I want to
Mhm.
have more time at home on my own. I want to rest more. I need to eat better. I maybe need to eat more.
Mhm.
And so just being aware. And then there's some people who obviously go into it much more, and are able to really adjust their lives around it. And it really benefits them in terms of productivity and
Yeah.
overall mental health, I think.
Mhm.
And then, of course,
Totally.
also, this information is a fifth vital sign, is what we call it, which is essentially that, like, knowing that about your cycles, tracking your cycles, can reveal things like PCOS,
Mhm.
signs of endometriosis, issues with your thyroid, which is very
Mhm.
common with women, even food intolerances or allergies,
Mhm.
chronic stress, which is very common.
Mhm.
All of
Yeah.
this will show up in your cycle, and you're getting like immediate real time data feedback
Mhm.
given
Yeah.
to you by the device. And you can take that data and you can talk to our cycle analysts about it, or you can
Mm.
take it to your doctor.
Mhm.
Same as if you wanted to get pregnant, you wanted to start the process early,
Mhm.
and figure out if there's anything you need to work on ahead of time. A lot of
Mhm.
people will take that data to their healthcare providers, that even like if it can be naturopathic doctor or a Chinese medicine doctor or
Mhm.
your fertility doctor. So there's a lot of benefits there, a lot of people who've unearthed issues that they were dealing with.
Yeah.
And then also, just as I said before, really the freedom and peace of mind of having that information about yourself,
Yeah.
knowing yourself that well,
Right.
that you can really make decisions and plan around, your life around what you see. And
Totally.
so you're making self-directed decisions throughout your life, whether that be, well, I want to postpone having a baby for a while.
Mhm.
I know when I'll be ready. Oh, I get to have a baby when I'm ready, and I know I'll be
Mhm.
prepared to do that. Now I want to pause again. Maybe in a couple of years' time, go back and have my second baby. These
Mhm.
things are all within your control. You have a lot more data, a lot more knowledge to work with.
Mhm.
So yeah, well, there's been many benefits that I could, anecdotally that we've seen,
Yeah.
through people who've used this. Yeah.
Yeah, it really seems like it. I know like one like small thing is I remember last summer we my husband had a work trip, but we kind of turned it into a vacation for us. And so I was looking at it as a vacation and he was on his work trip. And I remember after I left the trip, I guess I was in my luteal phase at the time. Yeah, is what I think that's the one where I'm like really in my most bad mood, like not happy, not feeling good about myself. And that's when I was on vacation. And I remember leaving and I was like, I'm never gonna plan a vacation unless I'm in my ovulation week. Like that was the worst time to go on. And it wasn't. I mean, it was when the work needed to happen, so we didn't have any control. But I'm like, whenever we can plan a vacation, like I'm seriously going to plan it around my ovulation week. Like that may seem crazy, but it's not. Like I want to be my happiest and feel the best about myself when I'm on vacation. So I was like, I'm gonna remember that for like when we're actually planning. Like I'm gonna
Yeah,
try to
and
time that
travel
right.
travel can be like overstimulating, and
Mhm.
you're dealing with potential, out of your routine, or things could
Mhm.
go wrong, or you're a lot of time with your partner. Like,
Yeah.
all these things are not necessarily conducive to how you feel like week, 10 days before your period.
Right.
Usually the luteal phase, the first half of it can be quite different to the second half. You might
Mhm.
feel like super productive and ticking off your to-do list and cleaning the house and
Mhm.
decluttering and really on top of things. And then the second half of the luteal phase, you might really just want to be at home in your
Yeah.
routine, taking care of yourself. So no,
Right.
I totally empathize with
Yeah.
that. In that, like, follicular phase is the outgoing, the extroverted, the
Mhm.
adventurous phase,
Right.
and the time often when you want to be around your partner the most,
Mhm.
when you're more social, and yeah, so it is
Yeah.
it can be a real life hack that just
Truly.
makes everything much better.
Yeah.
And if you have some control, like obviously in that circumstance you did not, totally
Right.
understandable. If you have some control, like planning your own
Mhm.
events, your own vacations, your own,
Yeah.
social events, or around work as well. And if you have
Mhm.
some flexibility about when you can choose to do different projects, All
Mm,
of that can feed in. And,
mm-hmm,
the best way of tracking is not just tracking your period, it is really knowing when you ovulate. Because
mm-hmm,
if you know when you ovulate, you truly know when you've then entered your luteal phase. If
mm-hmm.
you're only tracking your periods, you're just really guessing,
Yeah,
and it's not, you won't necessarily know. So
right.
that's really the key.
Right. And I think something I keep thinking about when we're talking about this and you're talking about all the data and the personalization of it, that leads me to want to talk about like the difference from Daisy versus just like using ovulation strips and just downloading an app. Because people on this podcast know I've been trying to get pregnant for the second time. And so I was like, okay, this was before I had gotten Daisy. I was like, I'm just going to, I guess my friend had given me her ovulation strips, but I remember thinking like, how do these know like my personal body. Like I just felt like there was a disconnect there. I didn't quite understand. And so hearing you talk about Daisy and the way that like it can really get to know you and how it has a learning phase about you and yourself, I feel like kind of answers that question of like how Daisy stands apart from just like the random strips you can get off Amazon, you know?
Yeah, so with ovulation strips, obviously a lot of people use them. The thing
Hmm.
to understand with that is they're looking for a rise in hormone. The
Hmm.
issue is you can have that rise in hormone and still not ovulate. So they might
Hmm.
say, now's the time, but your
Hmm.
body doesn't actually get to ovulation. The
Hmm.
other thing is it gives you a really tiny window of action. So if you're
Yeah, that's what I was
tired, your
thinking. Yeah.
husband's traveling, you're working, like you don't have a lot of time in order
Hmm.
to, do the baby making that you need to
Right.
do, and it
Right.
can make it quite stressful.
Hmm.
Whereas with Daisy, it's going to give you predicted ovulation. You're going
Hmm.
to have a data set that you can look back on. Okay,
Right.
my fertile window is around now, so this is when I need to concentrate on planning with my partner. And
Totally.
you will have that information like heads up earlier on. And then
Right.
you will also, once you're in that cycle, your most fertile time, which is obviously
Hmm.
around the day of ovulation, which is
Yeah.
only 24-hour window.
Right.
Um, and then, you also have the Daisy Day Partner app, which you can
Mhm.
actually have your partner download onto his phone.
That's
So that
awesome.
instead of constantly talking about planning and scheduling and we want to get pregnant, when are we,
Right.
you can actually just have him see whatever data you want. And it
Hmm.
can just be red or green, it can
Yeah.
be more, it's up to
Hmm.
you. But that can sync you up in terms of like not taking out some of the stress, making it much more,
It makes it a
um,
teamwork, as it
yes,
should be. You know, it should be
yes.
a teamwork. You know, birth control often just falls on the woman and isn't on like the man's responsibility. And so if this is a way for him to like be involved in the process with you, I think that's awesome because that helps
Mm-hmm.
take some of the like stress off. It also is like, okay, if you're not trying to get pregnant, but you are avoiding pregnancy at this moment, okay, then like he can know and he can make sure that he's got the condoms or whatever method, whatever you guys are choosing to do at that time. Like he can be like, okay, got to make sure we're, up to date on our condom order, just be prepared. And so that's one less thing you have to think about. And it's more of a team effort than just falling on you to figure out because that's often how it is in our
Yeah,
society.
and sometimes that's just an extra task that you have to get through, and it can feel not very fun. And
Hmm.
Daisy is all about just making it really easy. Like, if you really just want the process to take less than a minute a day of your time,
Hmm.
it can. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to take more time. Like,
Right.
like you said before, you can just use the device and see the lights and go, okay, it's red. I'm in my fertile window. Okay, we need
Hmm.
to be, having sex every other day or
Yeah.
whatever it is you choose to do. Um, out, and you can just do that. That's it. Or
Right.
you can have your partner download Daisy Day. You can look at your cycles. You can really dig in. Oh, okay, I seem to be having irregular cycles. Or my
Hmm.
luteal phase is really short, and that can
Hmm.
sometimes prevent implantation and prevent a
Right.
pregnancy continuing. You may not
Yeah.
even know this. You may just have a period and not realize, but it can.
Hmm.
So you can look at things like that, talk to your doctor, talk to your healthcare team, talk to our cycle analysts on the phone or over email, and you can learn more. And it's up
Hmm.
to you where you are.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't do that until you're a few months down the line and you start thinking, must be something going on here. But at
Right.
least you have that historical data set to refer to. And then if you
Totally.
do get pregnant, Daisy will give you all three flashing lights as a possible pregnancy,
Mm.
and then steady lights as basically Daisy's confirmed pregnancy via your
Mhm.
data and historical data.
Oh,
Your
cool.
temperature has stayed high and hasn't dropped which means you're not going to get your period, you're pregnant,
You're
right?
pregnant.
Of
Yeah.
course, you still have to take a test.
Right,
You
right.
still should need to see your doctor,
Hmm.
but that might be your first indication that you
Yeah,
need to take a test.
totally, totally.
And so then, you get pregnant, and some women like to continue using Daisy for the first few months of pregnancy. It can be reassuring to see
Mm-hmm.
the temperatures stay high that time
Right.
while you're
Oh,
pregnant, which
totally.
means your progesterone production is really good and it's staying
Right.
high.
Yeah, and
And
that
then
can
they
be a
put,
way of like helping you with the anxiety part
oh, for sure,
in the early pregnancy
especially if you've
stage.
experienced miscarriage or loss before.
Totally.
And then once you're happy, you put it away. And then 6 weeks after you've had your baby, you pick it up
Hmm.
and start again.
Mm.
And it's
Why the six
flexible,
weeks? Is that just like time for your
usually
body to?
because that's when, your body needs to get back into the rhythm of ovulating again. So
Okay.
Daisy needs
Yeah.
to look for ovulation after you've had your first menstruation. It's usually after about 6 weeks.
Okay, that makes sense.
So
Yeah.
you'll enter your first menstruation, and then it will
Hmm.
pick up where you left off, and work around the fact that you won't be getting the similar sleep schedule. You'll have
Hmm.
different wake times,
Yeah.
and that's all.
Right.
Many women with different reasons for that. Maybe
Yeah.
they've got shift work, or they're a
Mm.
nurse, or they have
Right.
baby, or they have a puppy, or whatever.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
still can use the device.
Right. And so hearing you say that, like, tracking ovulation too, that makes me think if you're breastfeeding, I know I breastfed for like 16 months and I didn't have a period, but the minute I stopped breastfeeding, I got my period back. But I know during that time, I definitely was like ovulating. So, but I didn't really have like a way to track it because I wasn't having a period and I was, yeah. So I guess this is a great thing to use while you're breastfeeding,
Yes,
especially if you're
and
not
you
having
can
a,
keep an eye on it to see if your
yeah.
temperature is rising and falling in the usual pattern. And
Mm-hmm.
if you're, know a little bit about that, you will see when you first ovulate, and then that will be followed, some 2 weeks later by your period.
Right, right.
Yeah.
That makes sense. That's really helpful. And I know for myself personally, like when I was, like I said, when I was dating engaged, I was like, at that point, I was like, I'm terrified to get pregnant. Like we cannot get pregnant as soon as we get married. So I can't even entertain the idea of anything other than hormonal birth control. Like that is what I was telling myself. I was like, there's no other option for me because I was so terrified of it. And so what is like, I guess your data showing like how reliable is Daisy? I know nothing is ever 100%. Even hormonal birth control is not 100%. Nothing is unless you're abstinent. But what
So
is
it's
the data look like?
99.4% accurate.
Wow,
So
that's
the
high.
green lights that you see, which are the non-fertile days, are
Hmm.
calculated with a 99.4% accuracy.
Wow, that's high.
So even when you start using Daisy, it's going to give you mostly red and yellow lights until
Hmm.
about 3 cycles or 3 periods in. Then it
Hmm.
has a decent data set to really be able to give you feedback on your
Hmm.
cycle. The more
Hmm.
you use it, the more frequently you're taking your temperature on a daily basis, the more
Hmm.
data you're giving it, the more greens you will get, and the more red, the more the red will narrow down
Okay.
around your fertile window. But you will always
Hmm.
have, we know biologically speaking, I'm sure you've spoken about this on the podcast many times before. We
Hmm.
have 6 days,
Hmm.
5 days that the sperm can survive maximum. One day of across, could be across 2 calendar days, 24
Hmm.
hours that you have an ovulation, and
Yeah.
then the egg's gone. So you're getting those days as the reds, and then you're
Hmm.
also getting some buffers on either side. It's not going to
Hmm.
just be 6 red lights. It's going
Yeah.
to be a little more than that,
Right.
but it will be tailored to you and when
Yeah.
you ovulate. And then
Right.
the basal body temperature will confirm that you have ovulated, and then switch back
Hmm.
to green. And then once you know you've ovulated, switch back to green. You cannot get pregnant again in the
Right.
cycle. You're not going to ovulate again. There's no
Right.
such thing. You
Right.
can only ovulate twice within the same period. That's how we
Hmm.
get twins. You won't ovulate
Right.
again after you've confirmed ovulation. So then you
Right.
have a run right to your period, and usually a few days into your period, in which you will be considered not fertile.
Hmm.
And then, of course, after your period, you should have a few not fertile days too. And that's calculated based on your previous data. And then your window of fertile window is opened to
Hmm.
include the concept that sperm can survive up to 5 days in the best
Gotcha.
conditions.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think that's really reassuring that there's like buffer on it too. It's not just like, okay, now here's the immediate one, like don't do it, like like you said, after time, like you've got your data, so you're able to look ahead and see like, okay, this day, this year is probably when it's going to happen if my body is consistent with how it has
yeah,
been every time,
yeah. And you don't have to make any decisions from that. The fertile window will open, giving you plenty of time ahead of your potential ovulation. So
Yeah,
once you can, if you've had a green day, it's green. If the next day is red, it doesn't mean you took a risk on the green day. Do you see what I'm
right.
saying? The
Yes,
next
yeah,
day has opened your fertile window, and
right.
because it works always on the bias of giving you, a buffer around those
Hmm.
days. So.
Yeah, that's key
Mhm.
because um, I also know that like there's probably some girls out there who are gonna forget. So what is that like if you like are very new to it? You're not used to doing something every single day at the same time every day. So like, what is that like if you forget one day? Maybe if you're early on doing it, like what is that
Yeah,
like?
of course. It can take a while to get into the habit. The best idea
Hmm.
is really just to keep it on your bedside table. You can
Yeah.
set an alarm, or you can do it whenever you wake up. Now, it
Hmm.
doesn't have to be the same time every day.
Okay,
So if you sleep
that's
in
good.
on the weekends and get up earlier the weekdays,
Hmm.
that's fine. You can
That's
take your
good because I
temperature.
feel like I was always thinking it had to be. I know with birth, like a pill, it has to be all the time. But I was even
Yeah.
thinking with these things, it had to be the same time. That's good for the girls to know who are like, I like to sleep on the
Mhm.
weekends. Do I have to set an alarm? It's like, no, you don't. That's really
No,
good.
you
Yeah.
don't have to wait, get yourself up. And if you do have a baby or you have other things going on, if you get a good chunk of sleep between, say, 10 and 3, and then
Hmm.
you wake up at 3 to attend to the baby or whatever,
Hmm.
then you can take your temperature then.
Mm.
If you
Wow.
get a good chunk of sleep between 2 a.m. and 6, you could take it then. Like,
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
okay to do that. And if you miss days, ideally you wouldn't miss more than one a week as time goes
Hmm.
on. You should try and strive to do as many days as possible.
Right.
But if you miss more days than that, generally Daisy will just revert to yellow and say,
Mm.
I don't have enough data to tell you what's going on.
Yeah.
I'm going to assume things are changing, there's a fluctuation. I don't feel comfortable giving you your fertility status. So it will
Hmm.
always revert to the yellow or the red,
Yeah.
to say, look, hold on, not sure what's going on here. I haven't heard from you in a while.
Right.
But if it's just one day, that's usually quite doable, and
Yeah.
it will use your totality of data and historical data to continue to make the calculations.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that's really good to know. I just know that, if when you're early on, you don't have a routine yet, it's like, okay, I'm supposed to, because that was one of my fears. I'm like, I'm supposed to take my temperature every day. Like, am I going to do that? Like, now I'm like, oh yeah, I have a lot of routine things. Why couldn't I just do that when I first wake up? And, the case that you guys just, recently launched
Mm-hmm.
with it too makes it really easy just to keep it on your nightstand. So it's like instead of reaching for your phone the first thing in the morning, you reach for this, that can help. That can also help break us of our phone habits, which we're
Yeah, you
always
can put it on
looking
top
for.
of your phone, and then
Yeah.
you'll know that it's right. Oh, yeah, I got to do that before I, talk to my
Hmm.
partner, have a drink of water, go to the bathroom. That's all.
Yeah, it's just like the pattern. And so I know we've talked about this a lot with pregnancy planning. So I think what you were saying with the app, because it has so much of your data, it has like projected data. So if you are trying to like plan pregnancy, the app will kind of give you like a heads up of like what's to come. And so that can help you like plan with when you're going to
Yeah,
get pregnant.
you can choose to turn on in the app predictions
Mm.
going forward
Mm-hmm.
for fertility status.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that can mean that you're doing that because you want to get pregnant. It can also mean that maybe you'll have a holiday or a wedding or
Mm-hmm.
something, and you don't want to have your period that time during that time.
Mm-hmm.
So you can look ahead and see, okay, when is my period going to come? Now, bear in mind, this is a very accurate way of tracking periods too, because you're using basal body temperature. You're not just guessing based on when you usually kind of get your period. So
Right.
basal body temperature drops right before you get your period. So it's a very
Mm-hmm.
accurate way of knowing when that will happen. So
Yeah.
if you want to plan around your period, you can totally do that too.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can choose to go forward in time on the app to see your predictions.
Just having that like preparation too to be able to plan, just like you said, helps give you some like control back over your life and your body, which I think again goes to the purpose of like also having agency over your body. I just know a lot of my listeners grew up in purity culture and don't even know the names of their body parts and their vagina and their cycles, and they don't even know what's happening. They just like get their period every month and it's like, okay, this is what's happening. But just being able to have this data about your cycle helps you can like plan and just like be in control and just have some more agency and feel more like in tune with your body, which is really powerful.
Yeah. And I don't know if some of your listeners may be aware of like natural family planning.
Yeah, yeah.
So obviously that's something a lot of people do. Billings method or various different methods are available to people, and maybe they learn through church or
Mm-hmm.
different avenues. Um, and obviously, with natural family planning, the idea is full abstinence during the fertile window. This
Mm-hmm.
means like no sexual activity is part of natural family planning, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so because when you do choose to have a baby,
Mm-hmm.
obviously the idea is like, oh well, that's when you're choosing to actually have sex during the fertile window.
Mm-hmm.
So that's based on the concept of abstinence, but periodic abstinence, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Right.
obviously they're only teaching this to people who are about to get married or married.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're in a relationship, you're married, and then you're doing natural family planning with your partner. And then if you're not planning to get pregnant yet, you're doing full abstinence in
Mm-hmm.
your fertile window.
Yeah.
You're not using condoms, you're not
Right.
using barrier methods, you're not using anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with what this is based on, which is the fertility awareness method, which is
Mm-hmm.
essentially a secular version of the same science,
Mm-hmm.
you are not impelled to have an abstinence period.
Right.
Now, if you absolutely don't want to get pregnant, of course, when you're told it's your fertile window, you
That's
might
your
want to
right.
avoid the kind of sex that could get you pregnant. It makes
Right. Right.
sense, right?
Right.
But for many people, that doesn't mean they avoid all kinds of sex.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean they don't use condoms. They might,
Right.
like we mentioned earlier, choose to use condoms or another
Right.
barrier method
Right.
during that time.
Totally.
A
'Cause
diaphragm, a
especially that time is
spermicide.
when your hormones are telling you like this is when your body is telling you like you are more turned on during that time. So it's like, okay, this is when you want to do the
It's a
act.
little
So
bit
it's
of a catch-22,
yeah, it's like you
unfortunately.
want to lean into that. You feel like that's what's best for your
Yeah,
relationship, and so it's good to have like other options, like you said, if we are trying to like 100% avoid no way, shape, or form, do you want to get pregnant? It's like, okay, well, don't do that.
yeah.
But
But
you can still do the other
so you
things.
have that information. But yeah, so
Hmm.
there is, some elements there. As you were talking about purity culture, some people may have heard of natural family planning or practice it
Yeah,
themselves.
right.
Essentially, this comes from that aspect of basal body temperature. You can add
Hmm.
in the cervical fluid, different
Hmm.
people add in different signs that they check on.
Yeah, can you
But
you
this is
can you
the
can
philosophy is
add in your like
you
discharges, right?
can
You
in
can
your
say
app,
like
yes, in the app.
nice.
And
Yeah,
usually we'd say that's most useful for people who are trying to get pregnant
trying.
because
Right.
cervical fluid is essential for pregnancy. You have
Yes.
to have it to get pregnant.
Right. Yeah,
Um,
that's something I've always told. I'm very grateful that I just going through my pelvic health journey, I've gotten to know my body really well. And my body is like, when I'm ovulating, it is like, you are ovulating. It is like the most obvious thing that has ever happened to me. So as we're trying to get pregnant, it's been hard for me because I'm like, I know I'm ovulating, but there's a lot of other stuff going on. But still, like, I think it's so good to be able to track the like cervical mucus that you have because I know for me personally, like, that's part of the big like signs that I'm ovulating. I also get like back cramps. It just like happens every time. And so, but being able to track your mucus, I think is really key too, because I know that is a big sign of like when I know for some people when they're ovulating.
yeah,
And instead
you
of just
really
trying to
need.
like remember that, it's
Yeah,
like,
and the nice
yeah,
thing is using Daisy, you don't have to track it, but some people
right.
like to. And if you
Yeah,
are trying to get pregnant, it is advisable to keep an eye on
definitely.
it because then you will know when your most fertile time is too. And
Right.
it's an important aspect of trying to get pregnant. But if
For
it's
sure.
not something you want to do, you don't have to add it into the app. It doesn't add
Yeah.
to the algorithm
Hmm.
or the green and red lights that Daisy's giving you.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how much is Daisy? And is the app an added cost or is it free when you purchase Daisy?
So Daisy's a one-time cost. It's around
Mm-hmm.
$300,
Mm-hmm.
and you have that for, we say, up to 5 years. To be honest, I know women who've had it for 10 since
Okay.
it was
Yeah.
launched in the
Mm-hmm.
US.
Wow.
Um, we have people who use our other device, which is the Lady Comp, which is our offline, off the grid, no
Mm.
app device. They've used it for several decades. These
Wow.
devices are built for sustainability.
Mm-hmm.
All repairs are done by us in the
Okay.
US or in the distribution in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
So you can use this for years.
Mm-hmm.
One payment up front. You use this for years through
Mm-hmm.
all your different possibilities of your fertility journey.
Yeah.
The app is completely subscription free.
Oh,
So
fantastic.
you're not paying a monthly add on.
Yeah. So many things these
Um,
days, you're like, love
oh,
it, and you get it, and
always.
then it's like, oh, but now you have to pay all this big monthly fee after you paid a huge amount for the product. So it's like,
Oh yeah.
what's the point? What's the
And you're
point?
getting like basically lifetime cycle analysis through the
Hmm.
app, but also through our team.
Yeah.
Many people who are health coaches, fertility awareness instructors themselves are
Hmm.
able to give you advice on the data that you're seeing.
Oh,
Also,
fantastic.
they can give you a data set that really digs in on things if you want
Hmm.
it, and then you can
Yeah.
share that with healthcare practitioners. Now
So is those
email
the
that to
cycle
you.
analysts? Because you were mentioning
Mm-hmm.
the cycle analyst, so that's the
Yeah,
people.
they'll
Yeah.
send you like a data set that really looks at everything.
So you can like
But
talk to a person if you're seeing some
oh yeah,
stuff and
you're
you're
talking
like,
to a
I
person.
I need
Yeah,
help with this. Like
you can
you
talk
can
to a
talk.
person every week if you want to,
Oh, that's amazing.
especially
Yeah.
when you're getting started, or if you find you're having issues, or you're
Hmm.
freaked out by something, or something
Yeah.
seems off. You can totally talk to someone. And obviously, they've, hundreds of thousands of women around the globe have been using these devices. They've been
Yeah.
around. The algorithm and the technology has been around since the 80s, even if
Hmm.
Daisy was only launched in 2014 with the
Hmm.
app. So yeah, no, you have, you're able to access a lot of help for no additional fees at all,
Mm. Yeah.
as long as you want to use it, really.
Fantastic. That's fantastic. And lucky for you guys, we have a discount, which is fantastic. It is a 15% off code. It's say what, and I will link it in the episode notes because if this is something that you're planning to do for like, I know you said 5 years, but people have had it for 10 years. I would assume if you take good care of it, you can probably have it for, a long time. But if this is something you're like wanting to do and not, and you're going to do for the rest of your life, it's like this is such a good investment, a one-time purchase to be able to have all access to this data forever. I mean, we're having periods until we're like in our 50s or something like that, so it's like you want to you want to be able to track that for a long time, and so to have
Yeah,
this
and
is
into your
great.
perimenopause and menopause journey, that can be really
Hmm.
helpful too. You learn
Yeah.
more about like, oh, okay, I think I'm entering perimenopause, and that can be
Hmm.
feel really empowering and confidence building for people who are at that point in their lives as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
know that there are other products out there that are helping with this stuff that like different rings and jewelry and stuff like that. And so this is a way if you're like, I'm not trying to like wear a ring and then pay a subscription for it every month.
Yeah.
It's like, here's another option for you, that is a one-time
Yeah, and basal
purchase.
body temperature under the tongue is still considered like the gold standard way of tracking
Mm,
ovulation. While
yeah.
there's a lot of technology out there that's skin based to
Hmm.
measure temperature, it's averaging a lot of temperatures throughout the night for you.
Hmm.
And actually, in terms of accuracy, there isn't really the research and science there for
Mm,
fertility to show it. So
hmm.
if it's something that's really important to you, that you have accuracy, that you know your fertile days because you want to be cautious, because you want to postpone pregnancy, because you want to be aware of your
Hmm.
fertile window, then it is still basal body temperature is the way to go.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so good. I'm glad that you mentioned that because I know there's a lot of stuff out there now that people are using,
Mm-hmm.
which is great, which I do think is like a good sign that more women are trying to like
Yeah.
get control of their life,
And
trying
there's
to
lots of
understand their
different
body.
reasons to use it. Maybe if you're
Totally.
using something else, you might only be interested in when your period's coming. You
Right.
don't want to be specific. You don't want
Right.
the
Right.
accuracy. You just
Yeah.
want like a general idea of what's going on.
Yeah.
And
Every
that's
every
fine.
different device has a different purpose,
Yeah,
and this one is trying to help you with your overall life
exactly.
and planning
This
and
is all
data.
about fertile window. Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. Oh, actually, before I even do my exit, 'cause I don't want people to get off before I say this. Today on the podcast, or today when the podcast releases, we are doing a giveaway for one of you to get a Daisy, which is so incredible. So the giveaway is going to be on my Instagram, say.whatpodcast. So if you go, I'll link it in the episode notes. I'll have the giveaway real big so you can easily click on it. It'll link you directly to the post where you can enter the giveaway. So, and I really appreciate you guys like doing this giveaway so someone from our listeners can get their
Yeah,
Daisy
we're
because
really
I've been
happy
talking
to.
about this with people in my DMs for a long time now. People have been talking about Daisy, so hopefully this will definitely be someone's lucky day to get one for free and as part of a giveaway. So thank you so
That's great.
much.
Yeah,
Um,
of course.
but thank you for being on the podcast today. I love talking about cycles and how we can just all better our lives and have agency over ourselves and have incredible products like Daisy to be able to just learn about our bodies and gain some more control and agency in a time that often feels life can feel really chaotic. So it's good to have some kind of a little bit of control if we can and planning. And I love that this product exists to help you get there. So thank you so much for being here today and for
Thank
chatting with us.
you. Thank you.
Okay, friends, we will talk soon.